Hey,
For this demo, I'm going to test a simple project, which is a coffee machine. So not the classical filter coffee machine you would have at home, the old style one, but more the automated espresso coffee machine, looking something like that. So which makes really good coffee, but complains half of the time that it's missing water, it's missing beans, or you need to descale it and stuff like that. So we get a project in Hiptest describing this kind of coffee machine. So first we'll have a look at the scenario, how they look. So I'll just do some points about BDD and the way we use it in Hiptest. So basically, each feature of the application that we test is described inside one folder. So basically, a coffee machine can, of course, serve coffee. This one is a bit particular because it can translate the messages you've got in the system, and it displays error. This kind of feature can also be refined in multiple subfolders. So all the errors related to the fact that it's missing water, all the ones on the fact that you need to clean the grounds and stuff like that. Now, if we look at one of the features, so for example, serve coffee, the basic one, this feature first can be described using the as I can, so I keywords taken from Gherkin. So basically the idea, it describes who the feature is intended for. So in that case, it's me, the coffee lover. What is the thing I can do with the machine? So I can get coffee. And what is the benefit I get from this feature? So in that case, I enjoy the rest of the day because I had my coffee. So this feature will be described with one or multiple scenarios. So this one is called simple use because, yeah, it's the most simple use you can have with a coffee machine. So basically, it says that given the coffee machine is started, when I take a coffee, then the coffee should be served. Here you can see that we are using the Gherkin annotation, so given, when, then, which clarify the intent of a test. So basically, given will provide the uh, the context of the test. So basically here the coffee machine has to be started. When describes the action or actions that are performed on the system, so in that case taking the coffee, and the then part will describe the expected output, so in that case that coffee is served. What you may see too is that we use the declarative way. So to explain it briefly, the idea is not uh, to give the really detailed way we do stuff, like I press on that button, I do this, I do that. It's really giving the idea. So instead of saying I press on the on-off button of the coffee machine, we'll say the coffee machine is started, which makes the test clearer. What you may see too is that we use the should verb to describe all the expected the checks we perform in the test. So that's not something mandatory, of course, but we find it way clearer when we have a look at an action word, because this way we can see, okay, it said should something. That means we are checking something on the system. Another thing we can see, for example, taking this folder, is the possibility to add a setup to a folder. So it's a list of actions. So in this case, it gives the context for all the scenarios inside this folder. So basically, for the three scenarios inside the display error / water folder, we need first to have the coffee machine started and to handle everything except the water tank. So that means that every time we take a coffee, we'll fill the grains and remove the grounds to avoid any other errors we don't want during the test. So once again, this project is using BDD, but that's not something mandatory for the automation. The only requirement you have in automation, in fact, is to rely on action word. So basically, all the scenarios and all the setups in the folder must be written only using action words. So no action result steps, which are also possible to do in Hiptest. But if you want to automate, the only requirement is your scenarios. So if we take a look at any of the scenarios, are only made of action word. So like this one, it's only action word. And this one too, same principle, it's only action words. I'll explain in more details the reason just after. Now let's have a look with this simple project to the code that we can generate with Hiptest. So to do that, the quickest way and the best way to bootstrap the automation of your project is to go to the Automation tab and use Hiptest Publisher as a service, which is displayed in this tab. So to explain briefly, Hiptest Publisher is an open source tool that translates the scenarios described in Hiptest into executable code. And as you can see, we support many languages and frameworks. So Ruby, Python, Java, JavaScript, C#, PHP, and so on. So to get the first code to execute, it's pretty simple. So for the demo, I'll use Ruby RSpec. I simply click here, wait a few seconds, and I've got a zip file containing all the data I need. So let's have a look at the content of the folder. So we can see 4 files here. The first one we'll have a look at is the configuration for Hiptest Publisher, because you can use Hiptest Publisher as a service, of course, but the more you'll work with Hiptest Publisher, the better it'll be to have it installed on your machine. So by the way, it works on Linux, macOS, and Windows, so more or less everywhere. And so yeah, you've got this config file for the installable version of Hiptest Publisher that is already set for your project and with the language you choose. Now let's have a look to the list of tests. So here we got all our tests generated in a single file. That's the default way we export the test, but once again, we can do some modification to keep the organization we have in Hiptest. So for example, keep the folders and things like that. It's what I did for this project, as we'll see just after. But yeah, that's the idea. So you don't have to generate it in a single file. So here, if we have a look at the scenarios, we can see that it's calling action words. Well, functions that represent the action word. And that's why you should only use action word in a scenario, because this way, the test file are auto-generated and you don't have anything to do. You don't have to manually modify them. They are ready to run. And the only file you need to modify is this list of action words I'm going to open right now. And here you will do the implementation. So each action word has become a function. So in that case, it's in Ruby. And here, the automation team will kick in and fill in the blanks. So replace all those raised not implemented errors by executable code. So here, it's completely free for the developers, the way they will do that. They can use, for example, some Selenium code to test the mobile application. They can use Appium if they want to test mobile application. They can use, for example, API calls and stuff like that. It's completely up to the development team, at least from what has been decided. And this file is the only file you need to modify manually. Once again, same principle than for the test. By default, we generate all the action words in a single file. And the reason for that is it's the safest way. So this way, we are pretty sure it works out of the box. But depending on your language, the language you use, and the way you want to work with the team, you can, of course, split that in multiple modules or mix in. So for this webinar, of course, I won't do all the implementation of those action words. So it's already done, hopefully. And if we have a look at it, it's shown here. So here, once again, we can recognize the config file we had before. We can see an option I added, which is with folder. So that means that we keep the folder structure of Hiptest. So you can recognize, for example, here, display errors and beans groundwater, serve coffee, bad usage was specific one, and support internationalization was another feature. So each feature has become a different test file. And the action words, of course, I implemented them. So I kept them in a single file because, yeah, it's way simpler and it's really a toy project, so no need for multiple mixins. So I implemented everything to ensure that, to implement the action words. So for example, here, starting the coffee machine, I simply do system under test.start. So I implemented all the action words, and now if I run my test, I should see 13 examples that worked. So we can recognize once again the folder structure from Hiptest. And for example, here, messages are based on language. That's a particular one that I didn't show. Basically, it's a scenario which is based on the data table. So for those who haven't yet tried the data table, the principle is you write a single scenario, but you generate multiple tests from this scenario with different data. So here, for example, we start the coffee machine in English and in French. And in the automation, we can see that we get two tests for this single scenario. So one in English, one in French. So as I said, downloading from the service version of Hiptest Publisher is nice to bootstrap your project. So it's, as I said, pretty simple. You download it, you implement the action words, and you are ready to go. What you may wonder now is what happens when you add new scenarios or you add new action words. So that's exactly what we are going to do right now. So we are in JIRA, and we got a new feature, which is definitely a killer feature, saying that we can shut down the coffee machine. So maybe it should have been done at the first print, but apparently it just happened to be added right now. So we got this feature. So what we are going to do is write a scenario describing that feature and implement it. So I already have a folder ready describing the feature that we can turn the machine on and off. So I'm going to create a new scenario. So machine can be shut down. So I've got my new scenario here. And what I'm going to do right now is link this feature, this scenario, to my JIRA issue. So it's simply a drag and drop. Here I go to the Hiptest scenarios, the Hiptest plugin in JIRA. Click on link. Okay, so now from JIRA, at least from this issue, I have a link to my scenario in Hiptest, and it works the other way around. Oops, sorry. So here for my scenario, I can reopen the JIRA issue describing that. So now I'm going to write my scenario. So it's going to be pretty simple. So first start with the context. So given the coffee machine is started, so you can see in Hiptest we get some auto-completion based on the action words I already wrote. So this way, for example, here, I don't end up with 10 ways to say the same thing, like given I start the coffee machine, given the coffee machine is started. Well, for a coffee machine, it's not a good example, but if we have a look at a website, for example, you may end up with given user sign in, given user logs in, given I sign in, and stuff like that. So with the auto-completion, you reuse your existing action word. And as you saw, each action word is a function on the automation side. So for example, this scenario, this first step is already automated. So I've got my coffee machine started. So when I shut down the coffee machine, once again, I reuse an existing action word. So far, my test is ready to run. Then the coffee machine is shut down. So of course, I don't yet have any action word for that because it's the first test describing and checking that we have a coffee machine which is shut down. So I'm going to create a new action word. Okay, so my test is ready. It's almost, well, almost ready to be automated. But if you recall, at the beginning, what I said is we should use the should verb to describe the checks. And here I didn't do it, so I'm just going to change that. Just renaming my action word. The coffee machine should be shut down. So this way, next time someone opens the list of action word, he will see that this is definitely a check and not an action performed on the system. And as I modified the action word, it impacted all the scenarios using it. So of course, in that case, there's only one scenario that is modified. But if I had 20 or 100 scenarios using this action word, I would only have to update this single action word. And it would impact the 100 scenarios. So this time I'm pretty happy with the scenario. And what I'm going to do is automate it and check that it works. So I'm going back to the command line. I'm going to use Hiptest Publisher. So what I'm going to say is first, I'm going to update all the test scripts. So I use my config file that I downloaded before, so aspac.conf, and say, okay, update only the tests. It's going to update all the test files. And as I said before, as all my scenarios are using action word, my test file are considered as auto-generated code, and normally it should work out of the box. Let's have a look and run the test. And of course, I've got an error, which can be expected because, I didn't implement the new action word, coffee machine should be shut down. So that's logical that it failed. Now, what I'm not going to do is regenerate all the action words and try to see what happened. Hiptest Publisher will help me in this process, because the simple thing I have to do is say, okay, I use, once again, my configuration file and say, okay, tell me, not this one, give me the list of changes that happened in the system since the last time I synchronized with Hiptest. So show action word diff. So it's fetching the data. And it tells me, okay, you've got one new action word that has been created. For the demo, because it's quicker, we just create one, but the same principle would apply if we renamed an action word, or if we deleted an action word, or if we changed the content. So now I'm going to say, okay, show me the list of action words that are created and give me the code skeleton so I can implement it. So it's fetching the data. And now I'll simply copy paste this skeleton of code to my list of action words. So once again, I use one single file for all the action words. But that's not, once again, it's because it's a small project and I don't want to bother with multiple mixins. But if I wanted, or if I had a bigger project, I would definitely do that. So I'm just going to do one thing important before. So making the started element readable from the code. And what I'm going to say is expect the system under test. So just checking if, say, okay, started on the system under test should be false. So basically the machine is shut down. Now I'm going to run my tests again. And now I can see 14 examples have passed and everything is good. So that part is good. I can commit my changes. What I would do too is regenerate the list of action word signature. So that's pretty important because next time someone will use Hiptest Publisher for this project, he won't have the message saying, hey, you didn't implement coffee machine should be shut down. So I'm just going to do that just to ensure this kind of problem doesn't arrive. So I just say, okay, regenerate the action word signature. And of course, that would be better. So now it regenerates the action word signature. And if I ask for the what happened since last time, this time it's going to tell me that nothing has happened. Well, just after it fetched the data. So no action word changed. Okay, so all my changes are good. I can commit everything and push that to the master branch of Hiptest, of the coffee machine. And now normally the CI, so the continuous integration, will play its role and run the test again to ensure everything works fine. So for this particular project, we use Travis CI, which is a tool with CI tool, which is free for open source project, which is the case of this coffee machine. The main problem is that it takes sometimes up to 5 or 10 minutes to start the build. And I'm not sure I'm going to be able to keep you attentive for 10 minutes showing nothing. So what I'm going to do is play the role of the CI. So how do you integrate a CI tool with Hiptest? So it's in fact pretty simple. In the test run, the first thing you need to have is a test run which is dedicated to the CI. So this one I called it CI because I've got lots of imagination. So here we can see that all the tests are currently passing because I checked it before starting the webinar, of course. And in this test run, the only tests you will place are, of course, the test runs that are automated and that you know that are working and for which the action words have been implemented. So as I implemented all the action word, at least the new action word used in machine can be shut down, I can say, okay, it's time for me to add this scenario to my test run. So I'm adding the scenario and Hiptest will synchronize the test run to add this new scenario. So it's done, and now we can see we've got one test which is undefined, so machine can be shut down. Now, when I want to integrate this test run with any CI tool, it's pretty simple. If you click here, you've got an automate button. And this button will give you two command lines. So once again, using Hiptest Publisher. The first one, so this one, is a command line you run before running the test. And what it will do is fetch the test from this particular test run. There's two advantages of doing that. It's first, as the tests are snapshotted inside the test run, if someone is modifying data on the scenarios, you still use the version in the test run, so the one that you know that is working fine. And so that's the main usage of using this command. So if I go to my configuration for Travis CI, so it's a YAML file, we can see the same command line here. So what I'm going to do is simply play the role of the CI. So first, I'm updating the tests based on my test run. So it's fetching the data again. Taking a bit of time because the fridge is not wonderful in this building. So we've got our test generated from the test run. Now I can run my tests. So I'm not simply going to use the rspec command, but I'm going to add some information to some options, to generate a JUnit compatible file. So running my test. So it's not going to say anything because it generates the XML but doesn't display anything. And the second command line that we can see here is the one we execute after running the test. So basically, it will push the results back to Hiptest. So that's why I generated a JUnit compatible file. Just a quick note about that. We've got 4 different formats of reports supported currently. So it's JUnit, TAP, Robot Framework XML and Unit XML. So it covers most of the thing. And now we get two notifications saying that new results have been pushed and they have been treated. As we can see it here, because now machine can be shut down, is displayed as status passed. We can have a look at the history for this test. There's been only one execution. So that's good. And what's even better is as this test was generated from a scenario linked to a JIRA project, it also inherited the tag to this JIRA issue, not project, sorry. And I can open the JIRA issue from this test. And now what I can see from directly inside JIRA, I've got the link to the scenario, but also the test in the test run. And I directly see the status of it. The demo is done, sorry. Basically, we've covered, everything. So bootstrapping the automation, creating new scenarios and automating them, and linking to a CI tool.